felt so much more comfortable and relaxed in my body. I had meditation experiences where I'd feel euphoric and like I was on drugs. I was just like, wow, this is the best feeling ever. And I think for the first time in my life, I really understood, what does it mean to be present?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium show. Delighted to be here, delighted that you're here, and delighted that my guest today is Andy Hix. Now, Andy and I met through a coincidence, really a couple of years ago, and probably get to the story a bit later on. But Andy's a mindfulness coach and the co-founder of Thriving People, which is a consultancy that helps organizations develop cultures where people want to be part of. So sounds like incredibly valuable work. So welcome, Andy. Andy's based in the UK. So how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. So for people who aren't aware of your work, I'd love you to just give us a little bit of your backstory. How did you come to be a mindfulness coach? It's not something I'm guessing that you that was in your career plan when you were at school. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it definitely wasn't. And even when I was at university, it wasn't what I was thinking about at all. When I was at university, I was studying history and Spanish, and I was just following what I was interested in, which I think it's a gift that my dad gave me, actually. I think a lot of people, I certainly have this sense, I want to impress my dad. I want him to be proud of me. And he gave me a bit of a gift when I was at school. He said, don't do a business degree, just do what you're interested in. And then you just follow that. And I thought, okay, well, I'm most interested in history. And then when I got to university, I realized that wasn't the most important thing. I picked up this book in the bookshop called How We Can Save the Planet by Maya Hillman, all about climate change. And basically saying we're really screwed this century unless we radically change the way we live. And I thought, well, screw history, screw everything else. There's surely nothing more important than climate change. And I really dedicated the next few years, really based on just reading that one book, but then lots of other things kind of fed into thinking, yeah, this is definitely really a big issue, to that topic. And I became president of People and Planet Society, which is this campaigning society at my university. I tried to change my lifestyle, stopped flying, became vegetarian. I went to the UN twice campaigning for a global deal on climate change. So really put my heart and soul into this. And I went to quite a famous UN conference in Copenhagen, COP15, and it was billed as this now or never moment for the climate movement. If we don't get the global agreement on cutting emissions this year, it's too late.
Wow. How long ago was this?
This was about 10 years ago.
Okay. So...
Maybe it's 15 years ago, actually. So yeah, according to that, it's really, really too late now. But what happened was there was all this pressure put on. Obama was there. People were going on hunger strike saying, if we don't get this deal, I'm going to starve myself to death. There was an NGO coalition called Tick, Tick, Tick. There was this whole, we don't have any more time. And then we didn't get the deal. And there was this whole sense of kind of despair and frustration, and like, what do we do now? We threw everything at that. What's next? And I ended up just thinking, I don't know what to do about this anymore. I don't see anything that I'm doing, either as an activist or even in my personal life, adding up to making a difference. So what I decided to do was take a step back from all the climate activism and just stop paying so much attention to it. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to let myself eat meat and fly, and I'm going to stop reading the Environment Guardian page. I'm just going to take a step back from this whole thing. And as an activist, I'd also been making videos, and I managed to start up a freelance video production company. And I joined a co-working space, and I did that for the next few years. And I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed the freedom and meeting all these social entrepreneurs in my co-working space who were doing interesting things. But there was something quite core missing, which is I didn't really believe in what I was doing. I wasn't passionate about making videos. And that's partly because I couldn't really feel the impact. I'd send a client a link to a video, and if I was lucky, they might just reply saying thanks. There was no sense of like what all of those hours of work had added up to in terms of a human impact or environmental impact. And also, I didn't feel like I really, really believed in what any of these organizations were doing. I was still in this mentality of like, unless we're saving the whole world from climate change, kind of what is the point? Did that for a few years. And then I found myself on a lads on tour holiday in Tenerife. All inclusive, English people drinking lager out of plastic cups around the pool at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was having a chat with my friend who was actually a therapist. And I was saying, I've been with my girlfriend now for 18 months. And I feel like, I think maybe I need to break up with her. I think she's very anxious. She's got very low self-esteem. And I feel like I keep trying to help her, but it's just bringing me down. What would you do as a therapist? I think that when I get back from this holiday, I'm going to end the relationship. But what would you do to help her? Because it's been so frustrating for me, feeling like whatever I do, it doesn't help. And he said, well, I think that mindfulness might help. Therapy and also mindfulness. And at this point in my life, I'd never been interested in meditation and mindfulness. My mum had been into meditation. And I had put it in this category of like hippie mumbo jumbo. That's unscientific, that actually made me feel angry. And it made me feel angry because when you're a climate activist, your allies, that everything you believe depends on the science. And your enemies, the people who are kind of blocking the world being saved, in quotes, are the people who question the science and say it's not really true that the world is warming. So anything that for me was not scientific, which at that time in my life would be things like homeopathy, Reiki, any kind of alternative medicine, Ayurveda, which I'm now really into.
How interesting! It's like you've gone through a whole circle, like a
massive circle. Yeah.
How interesting.
And also meditation. I was like, that's just like, there's nothing scientific about it. Why would I be interested? And anyway, I'm fine. I don't need any therapy or meditation or anything. And looking back, this was a big part of why this relationship wasn't going well, because I thought everything was somebody else's fault. I'm not doing anything wrong. But I just thought, okay, I don't know what this is. I'm curious. I'm going to get back from this holiday. And funnily enough, it was the Australian Meditation Society that I found on iTunes who taught me to meditate.
Wow. How interesting. Yeah.
And it was a kind of meditation I've never really done since, because it was visualizations where they were getting me to imagine like I'm sitting on this mountain and I'm flying up into the sky and then I'm diving down into the water, and I didn't really understand what it was, meditation, and why I was being asked to do these things. But what happened as I sat to meditate for those first few times was I realized almost for the first time in my life how not fine I was. And my dad has had this mantra for most of his life: I'm always fine, which is I'm never sad, I'm never angry, never despairing, never depressed. I'm just fine every day, whatever's happening. And I feel like I really took that on as a kind of mindset. And maybe some of the time that was because I didn't know what I was feeling. And some of the time I did know, but I just didn't want to tell somebody because it felt uncomfortable or vulnerable, to be honest. So I sat down to meditate and I'm like, wow, this is a mess in here. My mind is all over the place. I can't concentrate. I'm so agitated. I can't sit still for 3 seconds. My back is tense. My neck is tense. And then I started doing Headspace. And at the start of Headspace, you know, the app, the meditation app, he always would ask me in the meditation, how do you feel? And then what's your intention for this meditation? And my answer to the question, how do I feel, was always neutral. I just feel neutral. And the next day I'm neutral again. And I just thought, how boring to live a life where I just feel blank. What's going on here? So my intention was actually to feel more. But that was the main focus of my meditation. And it still is, actually. And it's actually quite different to what a lot of people do when they come to meditation. They're actually seeking to feel less, in a way. they're feeling overwhelmed with stress or depression or anxiety, and it's all too much. And they want to find a way to kind of deal with the overwhelm and calm down their emotions. Whereas I'm like, I want more. I want to feel more intensity, because it all just feels a bit blank in here.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So that was a big part of the start, is just trying to connect more to my experience and be honest with what it's really like to be me on the inside. And through that, take more responsibility for who I'm being and how I'm feeling, how I'm showing up in the world. And as I was realizing this sort of inner truth, as it were, things were also changing quite profoundly. And I was feeling so much more at peace than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd also started doing yoga for the first time, and I felt all of this tension starting to drop out of my body, and I felt so much more comfortable and relaxed in my body. I had meditation experiences where I'd feel euphoric and like I was on drugs. I was just like, wow, this is the best feeling ever. And I think for the first time in my life, I really understood, what does it mean to be present? I come across this word mindfulness or presence before, and it just meant nothing to me. I remember my friend recommending me this book, not The Power of Now. It was Be Here Now by Ram Dass. And I just thought, what a stupid title for a book. Where else am I going to be? But it sort of dropped in that, this is what happens. My mind is constantly thinking about the future and thinking about the past. And if I just pay attention to the here and now, it changes my experience really profoundly.
Amazing, amazing. Let me just kind of jump in there, because it's a really interesting story. From the activist days, which was a very intense period, to kind of almost stepping back from that, a time when that is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, or there's more awareness around that issue than there ever was, to then discovering mindfulness and really kind of almost changing your whole belief system around what can help and what can't help. So now, if you bring it to the present day, I'm curious to know what happened with the girlfriend, who was anxious. Did that relationship end, or are you now happily married?
No, I immediately broke up with her when I got back from the holiday. Okay. I started this meditation journey, and then a short while later emailed her saying, I'm really sorry, because I realized that I blamed you for the reason our relationship broke down. And I realized only now, how emotionally disconnected I have been. And that must have been really hard for you. And that, I think, was a big part of why our relationship didn't work out. And then she replied with a big email about how hurt she was and how angry she was. And it was quite painful to read.
Yeah.
But it didn't save that relationship, but it gave me a whole new perspective on all my future relationships. And actually, I think that one of the things that meditation, therapy, coaching, all of these kind of practices and approaches have in common is taking more responsibility for yourself and your life, and being less, it's your fault, it's their fault. The world needs to change. It's more like, okay, maybe something in me needs to change.
And that's a massive shift. So if we move on and we think about some of the practical applications, a lot of people here are going to be very inspired by your story, how you kind of shifted and now take a responsibility, or at least understand that just because a relationship has broken down doesn't mean it's all the other person's fault. There is, it takes two to tango. But what kinds of things can mindfulness, like really practical things, like what kind of things can mindfulness help with? I loved what you said before about experiencing peace for the first time. So a lot of people will be hearing that, thinking, that sounds good. How do I get some of that peace?
Yeah, well, what kind of things can it help with? I mean, pretty much everything, I would say. Everything changes when you're doing it with more presence. You do everything better when you're doing it with more focused attention. The kinds of things that I help people with, so I do one-to-one coaching. I also do workshops and courses. I go into companies and schools and do mindfulness. And common things are anxiety, stress, anger is a big thing I help people with, insomnia, not being able to concentrate. So basically, a lot of it is helping people deal with their emotions. And the simple way that it does that is, for a lot of us, feelings like sadness or anxiety, stress, feeling a bit depressed, feeling angry, are feelings we don't like. So we feel anxious, we're like, oh, I don't like this. How do I get rid of this? How do I numb it? Maybe I'll get my phone out and start scrolling, and it'll help me to not notice that I'm anxious, or I eat some chocolate. And what mindfulness is encouraging us to do is it sounds a bit grandiose, but to face reality rather than turning away from reality. Okay, I'm anxious. I'm going to face the fact that I'm anxious, and I'm going to face into it. What is this thing that I'm calling anxious, this experience? I can feel my heart rate increasing. I can feel some tension in my belly. I can see my thoughts are racing about this particular issue at work that I'm really worried how it's going to turn out. Okay, I'm noticing that that's what it is. And instead of then having a reaction of, don't like this, don't want this, how can I change this? Can I have an attitude of, oh, it's okay to feel like this. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to have this fluttery feeling in my tummy. It's okay that my mind is busy. And that's one of the meditations that I've got on an app called Insight Timer. It's called Everything's Okay. And it's really just encouraging people again and again, whatever's happening inside of you right now, just keep telling yourself it's okay that that's happening. And that can lead to a sense of more and more letting go of tension, letting go of resistance, and more of a sense of peace. So where people kind of get a bit stuck with meditation is trying to make something happen. Oh, my mind is busy. It needs to not be busy. Otherwise, I'm failing at meditation. I need to, mind, be quiet, mind, stop it. Sit down, be quiet. And that creates tension and frustration and a sense of I'm a failure because I can't meditate. I can't get this clear mind that I think that meditation is supposed to be. And instead, it's like, oh, my mind is busy. That's okay.
I love that. And of course, mindfulness isn't just about meditation. Like, you can be mindful in everything that you do, mindful in conversation, in eating, all of those things. I think our culture encourages us to almost be the opposite, mindless, as we kind of rush through each and every day. And I'd love your perspective on how people can get better at being mindful, because as I am, and I quit there, but there are, in some ways, it does feel like the opposite to our culture. Our culture doesn't necessarily encourage us to be super present. It doesn't encourage us to be mindful. It does encourage us to juggle as many balls as possible to be productive. And certainly in the work we do around wellbeing at work, we see this. This more with less seems to be a common mantra now in many companies around around the world, and that of course puts a lot more pressure on people. So how, in that context, how can people use mindfulness to become better? How can, without being perfect, I'll just add that because I certainly relate to that. We need to be the best meditator. We need to be, and this is, it's a kind of, I think, a Western culture disease that we all have in terms of perfectionism.
Yep, I've got that one too, definitely. So how do you get better at mindfulness? I would make two suggestions. Well, one thing, I think it's helpful to acknowledge, exactly as you say, that we live in a time where it's probably never been harder to be mindful. And some of the most brilliant, intelligent, well-paid people in the world are training their genius on how to make us as distracted as possible. And so trying to hook our attention, because then they get eyeballs on their adverts. So we're up against a lot in trying to be focused and be present. I think it's really crucial, it's really, really valuable to have a daily meditation practice. And I think of that as like going to the gym for my mind. It's a daily training in presence, in concentration, in being okay with who you are and how you're feeling. And I would particularly suggest that people start really, really small like even just doing 1 minute meditation to begin with. But the crucial thing being to do it 1 minute every single day and make it at the same time every day. So like after I have my cup of tea, I meditate, or after I have my shower, I meditate. Habit stacking. And then gradually building up when you feel, okay, that's easy now. I've got that in the bag, 1 minute. Okay, now I can do 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, and then build up from there. That's the thing I think people find the hardest, is really committing and making it a habit. If you can also support yourself with a coach or a group or a course, accountability buddy with your meditation, that will help a lot, because it's really hard to create these habits solo. But that's fundamental, I think, is the daily habit.
Daily habit, okay.
And the second thing I would say is Pomodoro. Do you know Pomodoro?
I know, yes, but many people won't know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so this has really helped. So there's that to do outside of work. The meditation I think of as something you do before or after work. When you're actually at work, how do you be more present? How do you reap the benefits of mindfulness? And how do you fight off the hordes that are trying to take away your attention span? Pomodoro was created in the 80s, before there was all of these distractions, but apparently this guy was really distracted still then. So and it's called Pomodoro because he had a tomato-shaped cooking timer. He was an Italian, and he said it for 25 minutes. You do one particular task. So I need to do my company accounts for 25 minutes. Then you take a 5-minute break, do some stretches, have a cup of tea, go for a wee, and then you do 25 minutes again. You do them in blocks of 4, and then you take a longer break. And what's crucial is that during those 25 minutes, your phone is on silent, your emails are turned off, you're not having anything pinging at you. Because we know that even if you just see a notification, even if you don't check it, your IQ goes down by 10 points.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. Because a little part of your brain is going, oh, I wonder what that is. We have this novelty bias, which is more interested in something new than what we're currently doing. And also there is energy that gets used up in task switching. Okay, just quickly check that email and come back. You've lost concentration. It takes 30 seconds to a minute to refocus. So it uses up energy. It causes you to feel more stressful, and actually takes longer to do the task when you're multitasking. So there's no actual logical benefit to doing it, but we can often have this sense of, I'm being more productive by doing 2 or 3 things simultaneously. You're not being less productive.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've heard that before. It's kind of the illusion of multitasking. That you and the new and shiny disease, if you like. Okay, we love the new and shiny. That's really interesting. And so we've talked about meditation. We've talked about almost bookending the day, so to speak, and we've talked about ways to be more productive or more mindful within the actual workplace. From a meditation point of view, you talked about some apps before that started you on your journey. What would you recommend for people who are listening to this, who associate or relate to the problems that we've discussed in terms of that kind of busy mind, maybe where you were when you started that journey, and but don't know, and it can be very overwhelming. There are lots of mental health apps. There are lots, and in some ways just deciding to start can also just add to the overwhelm, because then you've got to make a decision. Do I use this app or that app, and what's a good so from your point of view, and I'm sure you've got a stack of meditations that exist on Inside Timer, you mentioned before, and maybe other places, but where should people go to start their journey or continue their journey to bring this highly beneficial habit into their own lives?
Well, I started after the Australian Meditation Society. I started on Headspace, which I think is a brilliant app, and it's one of the main people who leads it is Andy Hix, who was a monk for 10 years. So he is the real deal. He really gets the stuff at a very deep level. I highly recommend Insight Timer because it's a bit different in that it's kind of crowdsourced. So anybody around the world can upload their meditations to Insight Timer, and that if they don't all get approved, but if they think they're good enough quality, then they'll be added to the library. And people also upload courses. And I've got meditations on there. So if you search Andy Hix on Insight Timer, you will see my meditations, and you can search for pretty much anything, any problem you have, and you'll find a meditation for that. So if you can't sleep, or you've got an anger issue, or you want to have more positive beliefs around money, there will be a meditation on there that people have also rated to say how good they think it is.
Amazing.
To help you with.
Amazing. Well, that sounds like a really highly valuable resource. We're almost out of time, believe it or not. It seems to have gone, rapidly. But the question that I always ask all of my guests, this podcast is called the Finding Equilibrium Show, which is all about balance. But how do you find balance in your own life? And what does the words finding equilibrium actually mean to you? I can guess what you're going to say, but I won't.
Well, yeah, definitely meditation and mindfulness helps me a lot. And I think you're right to say that meditation and mindfulness in a way is completely counter to our kind of the general trend and flow of our culture, and how focused it is on busyness and distraction. And it really helps me to find balance. I would normally meditate for 20 to 40 minutes. And so to just be still for that amount of time, doing effectively nothing, or not doing very much, not consuming anything, not moving anywhere, is a real counterbalance to the activity that's going on in the rest of the day. And I think that really, really helps me. I also try to find balance in my body. We connected originally through talking about Ayurveda, which, if people don't know, is an Eastern school of medicine that's thousands of years old. And it is basically all about finding balance in the body. And my body type balance tends to be hot and dry, and I get eczema. And so I seek balance in things like not drinking alcohol and caffeine, and eating certain types of foods that help my body to be less dry and hot. And I think actually one of the things that I've been with my partner now for 7 years, and one of the things that she's helped me with most is watching TV more. So I used to never watch anything on TV. Every night I'm doing something. And for me, it actually brings balance and more well-being, and actually a lovely, just simple connection with her. To just sit down for an evening, chill out and watch something, and not feel like I need to see anyone or achieve anything, improve anything in my life, just sit and enjoy. And for me, that's actually been quite a big change over the last few years, to just allow myself to do that and let go. Need to do this, need to do that.
Which is wonderful. Like the word that comes to mind when I hear you speak is boundaries, having those boundaries in your day, so like your whole life, but your life is a series of days, and having those boundaries helps you to recover and relax, whether it's watching television or, or doing something which is calming to the body, because we do live in a very stimulating world, and you just look at your phone. That's my big goal for, like, we're a little bit ahead of New Year's resolutions, but my big goal is to manage my phone usage, because it's like having a candy shop. You kind of look at it for one thing, and then it draws you into lots of other things. You've got to be very careful, and that's why I feel mindfulness and what you teach and what you support people with is so important, more important arguably now than ever before, because the number of distractions, the number of opportunities or people or brands that are really trying to draw us in has never been greater. And so unless we're able to really manage our attention and our minds, we can easily be pulled in so many directions, and we can see it. We see the trends in anxiety, in depression, in burnout, very, very common in the corporate world. So thank you, Andy, for coming on. I know you're super busy and making some time to be with us today. Let me acknowledge you for the amazing work that you've had. Thank you for sharing your journey, and it feels that all of those pieces will all come together. The activist, like, really learning, because that can be a very intense role, when you really are driven by a massive, like changing the world is quite a big, big saving the world, I should say, is quite a big, goal. So that can very much drain your, drain your energy, and well done for going through that, for, shifting and adapting, evolving, and for the work that you do today. Where can people find out more about your work, about your programs? I know we mentioned the Insight Timer, but do you have a website? I'm assuming you do.
I do, yes. So if you download Insight Timer on the App Store and then search Andy Hix with an X. For my coaching, it's andyhix.com. It's my name.com. And then I also have a consultancy which is helping people to develop cultures that people want to be part of in the workplace. It's about how do you make mindfulness and empathy and self-awareness part of the culture, and the company is called thrivingpeople.org. Sorry, thrivingpeople.org.
Thrivingpeople.org. And you're based in the UK, and do you work with organizations overseas, or is it primarily UK focused?
We do. I work. Most of my coaching is over the phone, and then we do work online as well with our courses, with our programs, our consultancy.
Amazing. Great. Well, thank you so much, Andy. It was really good to see you. And thank you everyone for your time and for your attention. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks for inviting me, Lawrence. I've really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.